I'm Claire, and I'm a senior consultant at Third Eye, which is a Salesforce consultancy based in London. I've been playing with Salesforce on and off since 2011, mostly an end user as a jack-of-all-trades solo admin. Before I moved to consultancy about 2 years ago, actually it was 2 years yesterday. Yes, I know. I've been dabbling in package development because it's a way of not having to do the same things over and over again. And I hate reinventing the wheel every time we start a new project because there are things that I always do when I get my hands on a new org. So we can use this to start new projects, share best practice internally so that it's all a consistent standard.
Hi everyone, I'm so happy to be here. I am the other half of this presentation. I am Jess. I'm a Salesforce solution architect. I also work at Third Eye with Claire. I've been at Third Eye for a couple of years, but before joining Third Eye, I worked for a couple of Salesforce ISVs. So I've seen firsthand the rigorous process that they go through to undergo security review to list their product on the App Exchange. But personally, I've been playing around with packaging for the same reasons as Claire. I don't like to create things from scratch, and we often do client demos, POCs, so I find packaging a great way to not have to start everything from scratch every single time.
So as a pair of non-developers, we can understand the challenges and benefits of Salesforce packaging from different angles. And we want to share with you today how packaging can actually be a game changer, even for folks who aren't deep into the coding world. So we're going to walk you through how you can use these tools to simplify your Salesforce implementations and just make your life a bit easier.
That's right. So let's take a quick look at some of the things that we want to share with you today. We're going to start by, of course, defining what a Salesforce package is and what the purpose of a package can be. Next, we're going to also shed some light on the many benefits of packaging development, especially from our perspective. So whether you're an admin, if you're a consultant, an architect, or you're, just curiously dabbing in the world of Salesforce, we'll show you how that can be a game changer for you as well. Then we'll break down the Salesforce packaging process for you step by step, and that's going to get really exciting, I think, because we're going to show you how easy it can be just for you to get it off the ground, and there might be a little bit of code involved, but you're going to see how easy it is. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't write a single line of code. All right, so we hope that by the end of this session, you're going to feel very empowered to start creating packages on your own. We're also going to be sharing some resources with you, so stick around because we have some goodies for you to take home with you. All right, so let's dive right in.
Yeah, let's start with talking about what is a Salesforce package. Well, in simplistic terms, it's actually just a container of bits of components, metadata, apps, and things like that. You can kind of think of it like a neatly wrapped package that you're then going to hand over to another org, and they're going to go and put it in that org, and they're going to unwrap it and have all the fun unwrapping it that you had creating your package in the first place. And the purpose of it, as I've just sort of alluded to, is to transfer these components between different Salesforce orgs. These can be completely unrelated orgs. They don't have to be anything to do with each other. So it's a great method of moving all this metadata. What can you actually put in your package? Well, the truth is, virtually everything that you do in Salesforce, you can put in a package. Whether it be apps, objects, report types, reports themselves, you can put it in a package. And then, as we've said, you can move it into another org.
Custom metadata types are some of my favorite things to package because it's so hard, especially if you have a lot of custom metadata type records at first. If you think that you're going to reuse this in another org or in another project, it's a great way to package.
Yeah, exactly. So why do you want to create a package? Well, here are a few key benefits. We've got reusability, simplified distribution, version control. But there are also a load of benefits for the different sort of Salesforce job roles. Yeah. So if you think about an admin, if you're working in an organization where there is more than one org, then you might develop something in one org and want to move it to another org. Packaging allows you to do that. It might be that you use version control with some of the stuff that you're releasing, and you can do that using packaging. And you can also package reusable solutions that can meet specific needs. Just saves time and effort.
That's right, yeah. So the benefit for us at Third Eye as consultants are also many. We have in our practice, throughout our team, we have created different packages for different purposes. For one, package allows us to develop and deploy tailored solutions for specific industry verticals. So things like Health Cloud or Net Zero Cloud or even CPQ, we end up repeating some of the same elements across different projects. And so by packaging these, it allows us to deploy these without having, again, to create from scratch, but also to establish consistency throughout projects. We also use them a lot of these as templates as well. So we have flow accelerators and best practice starters. This way we can put our signature mark into every project that we make. We make it consistent, we make it seamless, but also just more efficient overall.
Yeah, and just on that template creation, you know, if you think about page layouts as templates as well, if you work in a consultancy and you're doing lots of CPQ projects, everyone likes their pages designed in a certain way. So why would you do it manually every time you start a CPQ project? You create a package, you deploy your page layouts, looks and works the same way every single time.
Yeah, it's also great for demos and POCs. So you also have something that is already tried and true, tried and tested, and you don't have to repeat it or reinvent the wheel. But finally, yes? A proof of concept. Thank you for asking. I shouldn't assume. Yeah, so a proof of concept is something that you build. It's almost like a mock-up. You don't want to build the entire solution for a client if they haven't signed yet, but you want to show them, give them a little taste of what it can look like if they do sign on with you. So this is especially relevant if you are a consultant, maybe not so much as, you know, an admin.
Trust me, it's definitely relevant as admins. If you've got a user who comes to you with a requirement and they go, oh, if I click here, can that happen? You could just mock it up really quickly and then go back and add your error handling and your nice page layouts later on.
Good point, Claire. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. But finally, again, don't know how many of you are aspiring app developers, but it's a great way for you to get, you know, more reach with your amazing creation. So you have a great idea, you want to share it with the world. Yeah, if you want to go through all the different steps that it takes for you actually to list your app on the App Exchange, go through security review. Yeah, you can start, but if you're still just getting started, you're not quite ready yet, you can create unlocked packages so that you can share with, you know, your community as an open source project. All right, so now let's break the ice a little bit and play a very quick game. Take a look at this word map on the screen and see how many of these words you actually know the meaning of. So feel free to raise a hand if you know. Does anybody know what a managed package is? Or perhaps an unlocked?
We've got a few people.
Or a namespace? Yes, of course you do, Rob. Yeah, which one is your word?
I'm going to go for unlocked because I did present on it this morning. So unlocked packages are, unlike the App Exchange apps where you install it but you can't necessarily see the code because it's someone else's intellectual property, unlocked packages is pretty much what we're talking about here. It's that sort of admin-facing, developer, user-facing piece where you can just move things from org to org and use it in a similar way to change sets, but it has so many advantages over them. So that's unlocked packages.
Thank you so much, Rob. Yeah, so it's really good to see that some of you are familiar with some of those concepts, but don't worry if you're not familiar with some of these terms because we will be walking you through them throughout this presentation. So yeah, don't worry about it. So, let me go here now and introduce you to a little bit of packaging history. And the reason why we are taking a few steps back in time is to show you how Salesforce packaging has evolved and why that is relevant as well, especially as we now get to handle more advanced technology and why we are doing that now and why we are doing it a certain way. But we'll begin with, first generation. So think of it as a journey, and you can see how the differences between the first generation and the second generation gives us a lot more to work with today. So in the beginning, there was first generation packaging, and there were two types of packages that you could create. You could create managed packages or unmanaged packages. So basically, a managed package, like Rob was just explaining, it's mainly used by Salesforce partners. It's what you see on the App Exchange. It's what you saw this morning with the demo jams. They are all managed packages, which means you cannot change the contents after you install. You have to use what they've given you. You cannot see the code, the magic sauce behind it. And with an unmanaged packages, those are open source projects. Perhaps you've seen some throughout your career with things like an official SF. They've got some great unmanaged or unlocked packages, and we're going to find out the difference between those. But yeah, that's basically the essentials there. So in the beginning with the first generation, end users, they cannot, still cannot modify the contents with the managed packages. They also have this concept of a namespace. So what is a namespace? If you ever installed a package from the App Exchange, let's say CPQ, for instance, the namespace is SBQQ, __, whatever. It makes all of the contents of that package unique, all of the custom objects and fields, they are going to have that little namespace. So even if you already had a custom object in your org called, let's say, for instance, quote, yeah, or price book, or something that you were doing on your own, you created. When you install CPQ, you're not going to have that conflict because everything is going to have that namespace underneath.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give you an example of this. We have an object in our org called log, and we then installed an unmanaged package called Nebula Logger, which also has an object called log. And what it did is it enhanced our object called log. It added a load of fields, it changed some page layouts, but it hid all of our required fields. So when you tried to create a record, you couldn't, because you hadn't filled in the required fields because they weren't on the page layout, because we'd kind of morphed two objects together. So the namespace just means you can't do that. You can have two objects called log, but one will have the prefix. You can't then have these clashes.
Yeah. And with the first generation managed package, you can also upgrade it, which means that you installed it, but a year later, there's a newer, better version out. You can upgrade it instead of having to uninstall and install the new version. However, with an unmanaged packages, you cannot do that. So if you are, a developer, you're having a little bit of fun, you share that unmanaged package with your friends because you created some lovely reports and dashboards that they can install in their org, but then you're like, oops, I made a typo in my description, or I need to make some changes. You cannot upgrade it. So your friends cannot upgrade it. They're going to have to uninstall and install it. So that's one of the major differences. But I'm going to show you, though, because this is the one that I am most familiar with whenever I've played around with packages, is first generation unmanaged packages. And I'm going to show you how, you can go in a dev org right now and create your own. So that's all you need. You just need a packaging org, preferably a dev org, and that's what we're going to use in this example, okay? This org must remain active, though. So if you're using a playground org and trailhead that's going to expire in a year, yeah, maybe don't use that to distribute your lovely package, okay? If you're not the Salesforce admin in the org where you're creating the package, you're going to need those permissions. Otherwise, you should be good to go, okay? But it's so simple. You just go to setup, you start typing package manager, you're going to see a little button over there to click new. I'm assuming that you already prepared the things that you want to put in your package, and the rest looks a lot like creating a change set. So if you're familiar with change sets, something that I haven't seen in a minute or two because I love gear set, but this is what a change set looks like. It's exactly the same. First, you choose your component type, custom field, or let's say a record type or something else. a custom report type. You choose all of your different components. Then you can look for any dependencies before you add to your package. Again, it looks exactly like a change set. Once you're done, you click Add to Package, and then it's that simple. Once you're done, you click Upload, and you upload your package. So instead of sending those changes to another org, it's just gonna put it in a nice little package for you. You can optionally put a password. I've never used that, but you put a little description. You can put a link to instructions if you have, and you should always have documentation if you're gonna distribute. But that's it. It's gonna generate a URL that looks a lot like that, and that's what you share with people. When you say, hey, if you're installing in a sandbox, you put test.salesforce.com in your package, and if it's live, you do that. But it's that simple, and this is what a first generation package is. But there are limitations to it. So I saw some people taking, some photos, but get excited, but don't get too excited because there are lots of limitations to it. So firstly, with a first generation package development, each managed package requires its own unique Salesforce org, okay? So can you imagine having to maintain hundreds of orgs for all the different packages that you had throughout the years? Yeah, and you can only have one namespace per org, that's it. So, yep. Let's keep moving along. So yeah, those are some of your limitations to keep in mind. So it offers also limited version control, okay, especially with unmanaged packages. If you associate it with a namespace, it becomes a managed package, then you can't upgrade. So you are very limited in what you can do. So can you imagine maintaining hundreds of orgs, limited version control, you can't upgrade an unmanaged package. I don't love it, but there's a better way to do it, and this is where I hand over to Claire.
Go that way. Sorry, we're swapping sides because it's just easier to see the notes on this side. So we're now going to move and talk about second generation packaging, and I'm not going to lie and tell you that this is there is no code involved in this. But what we want to do is sort of demystify a little bit about how to create second generation packaging, just enough so that you can go away and experiment and try this yourself, because it actually doesn't have to be that complicated. But why did Salesforce develop second generation packaging? The truth is, it is a more modern and modular approach for packaging applications. And unlike with first generation packaging, every second generation every second generation packaging command can be performed using an API or a CLI command. Now, API, I think most people probably know what that is. A CLI command, it's a command line interface instruction. It's basically words that tell a computer what to do. And the benefit of being able to perform all of these second generation packaging terms using these controls is that you can actually automate package development. You could even do something when you update a piece of metadata and you put it into your source control, it automatically generates the next version of the package for you. So developers love it because it's less work for them. Second generation is source-driven development. It actually removes the dependency on all these packaging orgs. You no longer need one org per package. Instead, you basically have to maintain one org as your dev hub org, and this owns all your packages. So you no longer have to remember hundreds of passwords. It's one org, all good. Your package metadata, you may develop it in an org, but it's now stored in a version control system, which is where Salesforce is kind of moving towards backups and everything like that. And multiple packages can share the same namespace.
I love that.
Which means that if you've written some Apex code in one of your packages and you have another package and you want to use that piece of Apex code, you can tell it to talk to the other package that shares the same namespace. And finally, second generation packaging has introduced flexible versioning, which can be used by both managed and unlocked packages. New versions can be built on any of your previous versions. So that means that if you develop a version that has a fault in it or you don't like it, you can actually abandon that version, go back to an earlier one, and carry on developing from there. So it just gives you more control to decide what works best. And yes, I did change my terminology there. We're no longer talking managed and unmanaged. We're now talking managed and unlocked. You can still create these two different types of package. The terminology has changed slightly. Unlocked still has the same purpose as unmanaged. It's still for open source projects, but unlike the first generation unmanaged packages, unlocked packages can use all of the second gen managed packages features like namespaces, version control, all of this good stuff. You can upgrade
it, yeah, which is really great.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the demo of second gen packaging. We're going to start by talking through the one-time actions that you need to do in the org that's going to be your dev hub, and then we'll get into the step-by-step of how to actually create a package. As I said, it is a little bit more complicated than creating these first-gen packages, but once you know what you're doing, it actually turns a little bit into a copy and paste job. As with first gen, there are a load of requirements. You need a dev hub org, a source control system containing something that you want to package. We'll come to this, there are shortcuts. You need the Salesforce CLI, which is just a little thing that you install on your computer. It tells the computer how to interpret the commands you're going to put in. Optionally, you want an IDE, an integrated development environment. Now, I choose to use one because it can make most of this packaging process declarative rather than writing code. And I use VS Code. And then obviously there are a load of permissions that you need to grant your users as well. So we're just going to quickly walk through what this all looks like, because I know that some of these terms you're like, what's a dev hub, what do I do? So we're going to go through that. So step one is to enable the dev hub. Oh God, that image is atrocious. I apologize for how bad that image is. I can't really.
It is a video. I think you can press play.
Yeah, it's not going to, it's okay, cool. Anyway, so step one is to enable the dev hub. So you find your org that you want to use as a dev hub. It's normally going to be your production org, but when you're experimenting with packaging, I highly recommend that you use a dev edition, because you also need different permissions to delete a package if you've decided that you don't like what you just created in your production org. So if you're going to experiment with this, please do it in a dev edition. And I'm just going to see if I can play that video again, but creating the dev hub. Where's my mouse? There it is. It's as simple as in the setup menu, if this will play. Hello. There we go. You go in the setup menu, you search for dev hub. You then click one toggle that says enable dev hub, and then you scroll down and you click another toggle that says enable second gen packaging. Right, let's close that. Right, the second step is to set up the permissions for the packaging user in your dev hub org. Now, the truth is, if you are a system administrator in this org, you don't need to do any of this. This should already be in the system administrator profile. But if you're not, or if you work in a company like mine, where I have a completely different profile in our production org, then you need a permission set that's going to grant all these permissions. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what permissions are required, but we're going to give you access to these slides later, and you can either watch the video or it will give you the exact information of what you need to grant. Step 3 is to install the Salesforce CLI. And it's as simple, you go to a URL, you download the version for your operating system, you follow the little wizard that appears to install it. It will then tell you that you've installed it, Bob's your uncle, you're done. It's really not complicated. If you can install anything on your computer, you can install that. And then finally, we've got this optional step to install an IDE. And as I said, I do this because I want to not write code. But if you are going to install something like VS Code, make sure you also install the Salesforce extension pack, because that gives you a load of other useful commands to use in VS Code to work with Salesforce. Now, I'm hoping when I click next, I'm not going to get that error again. Brilliant. Yay. Okay, we're now moving from the one-time actions that you do once, unless you move company or you need a different dev org. We're now going to move on to the things that you're going to do every time you create a package. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a DX project in VS Code. Now, this basically means that you're creating a workspace on your computer where you can work with the Salesforce commands. And it's going to just reside somewhere on a folder, on your computer, on your network, whatever you want. And to do that, we open up the commands in VS Code. We click on Create a Project. Then we click on Standard, because this is going to be our standard environment for this. We then give our project a name. Now, this is your project name, not your package name, but you can call them the same thing. We click Enter. It asks you to choose somewhere on your computer where you're going to store that project, and you click Create Project. You're done. That wasn't hard.
Can you put more than one package in a project?
Yes, you can, but we're not coming into that today. But absolutely, you can develop more than one package from the same project. It's just I choose to be simple and keep things separated because I'm still learning packaging. The second step is to authorize your dev org. So that basically means connect your dev org to your project. And again, it's really straightforward. We open up our commands, we search for authorize a dev hub, we click on it. We then have to give the dev hub an alias, and I call it dev hub. You know, I'm simplistic like that. It then opens a browser window for you to log into that dev hub. And when it's successful, it will tell you it's successful. You close the window, you go back to VS Code, that step's done. The next step is to connect your development org to VS Code. Now, as I said, I cheat. I don't actually connect to my source control to pull the metadata for my project. I develop my project in an org and then connect my project to my Salesforce org and pull the metadata directly. So if you're getting into packaging and you're not a developer, this is a really cool way to get started. And the authorization of our dev org looks very like setting up our dev hub. So we this time search for authorize an org, we give it an alias, or we tell it's the project default, we then give it an alias, we then pop up a browser window for us to put our credentials in, we type them in, all's good, it will tell you you're authorized, you go back to VS Code. So it's still simple. The next step is to retrieve our package metadata. Now, this is a perfect example of why I'm using VS Code. In VS Code, with the extension enabled, you can actually go and browse your org metadata. And when you go and find the bit that you want, and then you click download using the button on the right-hand side, and it will pull it into your project. It's taking a copy of it into your project. And you just do that for all the bits of metadata that you want in your package. And when you're done, which it will show you in a minute, you go back to viewing your project, and you'll see that you've got a folder called force-app, and it will contain those various bits of metadata. So that's your package contents in one place. Now, one of the downsides of second-gen packaging, but not big enough to stop you using it, is it won't tell you the dependencies on other things. So if you're bringing a field in, you also need to go and pull in your profile or your permission set or something like that. It doesn't know that for you. So you just have to be a little bit more aware of what you've edited. The fifth step is to create the package, and this is where we actually do have to start putting some code in. And you're going to do it using something called the terminal, which is just shown just there. The command is really quite straightforward. It's a base command of sf package create. But you then follow it with a selection of flags that tell it extra information. So some of these are required, some of them are optional. The required ones are things like -n, open brackets, what you want to call your package. And then you've got -t, and you follow that by the type of package you're creating. So I'm going to assume if most of you are experimenting with this for the first time, you're going to be creating unlocked packages. -r, you then have to tell it where to find the files within your project. Now, I mentioned that when I pulled all my metadata in, it went into a folder called force-app. So therefore, in my example command down here, I'm telling it to go and use the path to force-app. You can also add optional things. So if you hadn't connected your project to your dev hub, you would need to tell it what your dev hub is. So this is this one, but we've connected it. We don't need to do that one. You can also add descriptions, and if you're creating unmanaged packages and you don't want to use a namespace, you have to put -e to tell it that you're not adding a namespace to your package. But what does this actually look like to run, okay? Well, I've built my command up here, And I'm literally going to copy and paste it and show you what happens in VS Code. So I'm pasting it in, or I will be in a second, and I press enter, and then I'll wait, and then it comes back with a package ID. So what this has done at the moment is that's created the cardboard box, and it's almost put the contents in, but it's not gift wrapped yet. You can't actually do anything with this at the moment. You can't install it. So what we need to do now is we're going to create a version of this package so that we can actually install it in another org. And again, it is more code, but it's just as simple as the last time. So this time it's SF package version create. Again, we have flags. They do use different letters to the previous time, but some of them are actually the same. So you'll see here I've got -P. It's the package name. You can also use the number that you got back, but I use the package name again. It's the same as -N on the previous command. And then -D is the path to the directory. Well, that's the same as -R on the previous command. So I don't know why they are using different letters, but they are. You can add, yeah, exactly, it's Salesforce. You can add installation keys if you want to. So that's just a password to make sure that only the people who are supposed to install it can. And you basically have to choose either X or K if you're going to have the password or not have the password. And then if you've got any Apex in your package and you want it to be installed somewhere, you have to include -C so that it runs the Apex tests to check that you've got the right amount of code coverage. So then that's the command that I'm creating because my package has no code. And again, when we get to this video, I'm going to paste it in. You press enter. And what you're going to see now is it actually comes out with a load of warnings, which can be scary when you see them the first time. Just read them. You don't need to worry about them. But the important thing is this thing on the bottom is going to give you the next command that you actually need to put in. Because packages can take quite a lot of time to create. It depends how much you've got in them. And the command that I just copied gives you a status for the creation of your current package. And you can basically keep putting that command in until you end up with a message that comes back like this that says success. And the one that comes back with success has the URL for installation. Now, I'm going to stop you at the question that we're going to get. Basically, a package creation takes about the same length of time as it takes to validate or deploy a change set or do any sort of DevOps deployment. So if you have a lot of code in there, it will take a long time to create. I was sat there waiting for something to create the other week, and it was like 90 minutes in, still hadn't created, and then it gave me an error message. You know, like, it's really annoying. You sit there for 90 minutes, and anyway. So with first generation packaging, that was then the end of the story. You can't upgrade it, you can't change it. But that's not true in second gen. With second gen, we can update our packages, whether they're unlocked or managed. And it's really easy. We update the metadata in our project, which was repeating step 4. We create a new version of our package, which was repeating step 6. We wait till we get the new installation link, and then we share it, and people can install the new version of the package. But your old version still exists as well. So actually, if someone installs your new one and they don't like it, they can uninstall it, and you can actually downgrade unlocked packages to a previous version. It's quite cool.
Right.
Right. Do you want to?
This is one of my favorite parts, yeah, where we're going to be sharing with you some best practices, some tips and tricks. So once you're ready to get started, you can keep these things in mind. So firstly, always create a package with a specific goal in mind. I mean, especially if you want to distribute it, okay? So define what your package needs to achieve. This will help you maintain the focus and make sure that it also serves a purpose. And over here, consistency is key. So use clear and consistent naming conventions for all your package components, okay? It will make it easier for anyone working with the package to understand and navigate the contents. So when creating a namespace, for instance, use something that's useful and informative to your users, and don't name a namespace after a person. Document your solution, okay? I mean, nobody likes documenting. We are not, writers. We are people who build cool stuff, but documenting a package that you're going to distribute is very important. And this includes, installation instructions, post-install instructions, usage guidelines, troubleshooting tips. This will make your package a lot more robust. Yes. Less is more. Avoid the temptation to add everything that you want in your package, every idea that you've ever had, okay? So only include the components that are really necessary to make that package work. Dependencies matter. I don't know if my clicks are matching the things
They are now.
that are. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, dependencies. So even though you don't want to put everything ever in a package, do consider those dependencies that Claire talked about, those things that you want to, because you don't want your package to break because of that, all right? Last but not least, test. Test your package. If you're going to distribute it, share it with your friends. Have them, install in their dev orgs or sandboxes and play with it. Yeah?
Put it in, if you're giving it to your friends to test.
Not in production.
Don't tell them to put it in
Don't
production.
test in production. Yeah, I mean, if you're sharing it with an enemy, maybe. All right, so build your design to allow your users to make choices to override settings locally. And this is something that we can definitely relate, is having a UI for people to also, override, whether it's a custom setting or...
Yeah, I mean, things like, if you've got two different ways of your package to run, you could put it in custom metadata. You could even bring that custom metadata onto a screen on the front end of Salesforce so people can choose how the package runs. But yeah, just give users options on switching things on and off. And
all right,
like that.
We're gonna skip through the summary because we wanna allow for questions, but also scan this QR code if you wanna take home a PDF version of this presentation. It will include loads of lovely links that we're gonna show you next, and many more.
And if you
like
go to
all
the
the
next
videos
screen,
that you
it's
watch.
still on it. So,
Yeah, so
that's the same QR code.
yeah, but we have loads of links. We have all the videos that we shared with you, and you can take those home with you today.
Cool.
Questions?
Yes. Any questions? Yes, go for it.
You say avoid using unmanaged package to move components from the sandbox to production.
No, you shouldn't be using packaging to move from sandbox to production. You can use your change sets or your normal DevOps. Packaging is for moving between unrelated orgs. Yeah. Salesforce definitely, they actually have in the notes, this should not be used for moving from sandboxes to production.
The reason why it's not recommended is there's no version control with unmanaged packages. So especially if you're moving changes from one environment to another, version control is very important, especially if you work with other teams who are also making changes.
Like unmanaged, you also unlock.
Yeah, same. It's not recommended for moving between related orgs. Yeah.
There are better tools for that, and better processes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah?
Yeah, the org where your package, in first generation, the org where your package metadata is, if it's not active, they can't install it. It's your dev hub org that has to remain active because it owns the package. So if you're using a production org, the chances are it is going to remain active. If you're experimenting in a dev edition, basically when that org is no longer active, the package can't be installed because it's owned by that dev.
But the version control is not in the dev hub.
No.
No, it's in source control, so it's a source control system,
Yeah.
If I had to start experimenting with packaging, and I'm quite confident with VS Code, I understand what a CLI is.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why I should go for first gen, or should I just be interested in second gen packaging?
I would say second gen. Salesforce obviously evolves all the time and they want you to use the more modern practices. I'm not going to lie, when we put this talk together, I was only aware of second gen packaging. I didn't know there was a package
I was
manager.
only aware of first gen, but
So I started playing in VS Code, and what I would say is on the resources, can you just go back one slide? I've given you like the base commands to get going, but if you go to this one, the Salesforce CLI command reference, it literally contains all of the extra flags that I didn't mention and all of the different commands to do all the different things. That's where I started, and then I worked out it's a copy and paste job.
And with Claire's little cheat sheet that she had in that one slide with the little flags, that is super helpful. So that got me, it definitely helped me overcome my fear of VS Code. knowing that I have something that I can just copy and paste.
Yeah. Yes.
Have time for, yeah. One more
last.
question, yeah? Mm-hmm.
I think I know the answer, but can you convert first-gen packages?
Rob, can you answer this? Because I think I know I've got an answer, but I don't know if I'm actually right.
I don't know myself, to be honest. I would be tempted more to go back to where the metadata lives for building the packages.
Yeah.
And like pull it out and rebuild it.
What I think I read somewhere was no, you can't just convert a package. When they first introduced second-gen packaging, I believe they had some sort of a conversion program, but it is not there anymore as far as I'm aware. But yeah, Rob's suggestion's really good. If you've still got this active first-gen org, you could go there and pull it out. But what I will just say, I know we're time up, if your first-gen package had a namespace, that namespace has to be unique on all packages in the entire world. So if you try and move it to second-gen, you can't use the same namespace.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, everyone.
for coming. If you have more questions, we can take them. Yeah, that's fine.